Hearing number 8211 is being conducted pursuant to Section 26.100.030 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis. The purpose of the hearing is to determine whether the conditional use permit issued to Tabaco, CO, Jose, and Yideret Alvarez to occupy 6163 Del Mar as a retail store for retail sales of gifts, clothing, hookah items, and smoking accessories, subject to certain conditions, should be revoked. The conditional use permit is numbered as 123272. The conditions in question are as follows. Condition 3. There shall be no sale of items that can be used or intended for the use, such as drug paraphernalia defined in Ordinance 68404 or its successor ordinances, including but not limited to food scales, glass tubes, disposable lighters with pop-off tops, steel scrubbing pads and screens, rolling papers, ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, diet supplements, sleep aids, bath salts, or other substitutes for illegal drugs. In addition, there should be no sale of cigars or cigarillos commonly used or adapted for the use involving a controlled substance, examples of which include but are not limited to the following: Phillies, Dutch Masters, White Owl, Swisher Sweets, Splitterillos, Backwoods, Optimo and Garcia, and Vega, and games. Condition 4. There shall be no temporary signage on the premise or posted to the exterior or interior of the windows or doors of the establishment at any given time. The Office of the Zoning Administrator has the burden to prove the conditional use permit conditions have not been complied with. After all evidence of the Zoning Administrator has been presented, the Board will ask for additional testimony, if any, in support of the revocation. Then the conditional use holder will be given the opportunity to present evidence. Lastly, the Board will hear other testimony in opposition to the revocation, if any. Your testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the Board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, members of this Board may have questions for you. Following the hearing, the Board will proceed with its regular agenda. Following the conclusion of the regular agenda, the Board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearing. The Board will notify the conditional use holder of its decision by mail in about 2 weeks. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents which are being introduced into evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of the zoning code of the City of St. Louis. Item 2, conditional use permit numbered as 123272, issued to Tabaco, CO, Jose, and Yideret Alvarez to occupy 6163 Del Mar as a retail store for retail sales of gifts, clothing, hookah items, and smoking accessories, subject to certain conditions. Item 3, a letter dated October 16, 2017, sent to Tabaco, Jose, and Yideret Alvarez from the zoning inspector warning of the violations of the conditions that were found upon a recent site inspection and the potential for a revocation hearing should the violations not be corrected within 30 days of the date of this letter. Item 4, a memorandum from the zoning inspector to the zoning administrator stating that upon her reinvestigation performed on February 20, 2018, the zoning inspector found violations of conditions number 3 and condition number 4 of the conditional use permit. This memo includes photographs of said violations. The memorandum from the zoning inspector to the zoning administrator stating that upon her reinvestigation performed on November 20, 2017, the zoning inspector found violation of conditions 3 and 4 with photographs which have been submitted as well. Item 5, public notices for today's hearing as well as those past hearings. And item 6, a certified letter dated March 13, 2018, sent to the conditional use permit holder and to the council for the permit holder from the board secretary providing notice of today's hearing. At this time, the board asks the representative of the zoning administrator to please come forward and be sworn in.
Would you raise your right hand? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name for the board.
My name is Myra Turner, zoning inspector for the City of St. Louis.
You please proceed with your investigations.
Okay. Upon inspection today, the business is closed. All signs and products have been removed from the premises.
So the board is in receipt of a memo which shows the investigation dated April 3rd, 2018, that the premise is closed, the business is closed, and all products have been removed.
Yes.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much. The board asks the representative from the Office of Health to please come forward and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
State your name for the board, please.
Maria Cutriano.
Can you please tell the board about your investigations?
Another health inspector went this morning and did see that the establishment was closed.
Okay. So again, your visitation this morning showed the business is closed and the premise is vacated.
Yes.
Any questions for the Division of Health, Department of Health from the board? Thank you very much. If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify that the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none, the board asks a representative of the conditional use holder to please come forward and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
State your name for the board, please.
My name is Mike Colonna. I'm an attorney that represents Tobacco. Mr. President, members of the board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come before you today and speak on behalf of the company. The inspectors for the city are correct. Tobacco decided to close its doors. I have prepared a letter for the board confirming that the business has been closed, and also a little narrative, I guess you would say, about the company's experience. I think you all know that that's a special district requiring special permits. I've always thought that when we see something that doesn't work like it's supposed to, by we I just mean folks that are on the street or in the trenches, we should bring it forward, otherwise we're never going to fix it. I will tell you that Tobacco did, to the best of their abilities, work with the city to remove any paraphernalia, whether they be glass pipes, whether they be bongs, whether they be cigarillos. But when you have a store 2 doors down from you, that's another, let's use street terms, head shops that continue to sell glass pipes, bongs, cigarillos, cans that look like a soda can that you can open up and put your drugs in. Folks will walk into our store, look around, walk outside, and go 2 doors down to the other store. If we're going to have ordinances, if we're going to have permits, we all have an obligation to make sure that those permits and those ordinances are enforced uniformly. I do understand that this is a complaint-based procedure. So part of my letter on behalf of the company informs the city in case they were confused by the time that we walked into the competing store in February with an inspector, the alderman, and a neighborhood person, and pointed out all the violations. We now have something on paper that, again, I will turn over to the board, and I've dropped a copy off to the alderman. It's city government it's big and it's tough for people to navigate. And in all my years in city politics, I've never seen an inspector or an elected official purposefully go out and try and not uniformly inform regulations, ordinances. But again, I do think we have an obligation that when we see things that aren't being done like they're supposed to, we should say something. Because, my clients still have a good opinion of the city. The time that they spent here was a good time. They did make some money. They had a good experience. They were just a little bit confused on why the exact same store 2 doors down allegedly got a pass. So in any event, I've addressed the letter to the secretary because I didn't know who to address it to. And then they came to this decision not too long ago to shut the doors. Otherwise, I would have sent a letter earlier to say that we no longer need to have the hearing. So I guess technically, Mr. President, we're not objecting to the revocation of the permit since we don't need the permit anymore. Do you have any questions for me or for the client?
And so just as a comment that goes along with this, the conditional use permits that are issued are, issued to individual business owners. And so in defense of our zoning inspector, she can only enforce what those conditions are in each permit. And so what you have is a situation where verbiage was in place for one conditional use permit holder. At some point in time, the verbiage changed. And let me also say that not by this board, the verbiage changed. And so the commentary to the individual that held this conditional use permit was, if you disagree with the condition that's on here, we would highly recommend that you sit down with the zoning department and the building division, and we'd highly recommend that you work through this. I think that you're correct. Things need to be enforced equally, assuming that the rules are the same. And in this case, they were not approved in the same manner, so they were enforced by the conditions that were on each permit. I'm sorry that didn't happen. I'm sorry that this didn't work out, but at the end of the day, we will definitely take that under advisement because we are here to help people succeed within the guidelines of what's appropriate.
And Mr. President, I guess 20 whatever years of practicing law, if I have a client where I think that they're doing something that exposes them to litigation, I'm going to tell them about it. And as somebody that lives into the city, when I think that the city is exposing itself to litigation, I feel as if I have an obligation to tell you about it.
Right.
It's just as plausible of an argument that English as a second language prohibited my client from continuing to operate while the folks 2 doors down didn't have much of a problem. Now I know that sounds conspiratory, and I'm not saying that's what happened. But again, when you've got folks that are just trying to keep the lights on and pay the bills and have to spend money to hire someone like me to help them navigate, they can only navigate so far until they throw up their hands and say, I'm sorry, I just can't do it anymore. I got to go back to work 10 hours a day at Quick Trip or something. And it's the optics that are just not good. It gives all of us egg on our face. But you have done a commendable job of shining a light in proper avenues of how to comply. I'm just sorry that my clients kind of threw up their hands and said, we can't do it anymore. So, in any event, any other questions?
Any other questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
If there is anyone else present opposing this revocation who wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none, the matter concerning hearing number 8211 is now closed and submitted, and I would like to introduce into evidence 2 items. The report from the zoning inspector, and I would like to also, as item A, and I would like to introduce into evidence item B, the letter from the conditional use permit holder to the secretary. Hearing number 8216 is being conducted pursuant to Chapter 8.97 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis. The applicant, Ade Tukulo, Asis Anya, DBA Underground Inc., STL, is proposing to operate a tattoo parlor at 5508 Natural Bridge. Due to the nature of the business, the applicant is required to hold a license and a permit issued pursuant to Chapter 8.97 in addition to any other requirements under the law. As outlined in Section 8.97.070 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis, the Board of Public Service may approve such application after a hearing if it is satisfied that the applicant is of good moral character and that the applicant has given evidence that he will be able to operate the premise in compliance with all regulations and laws governing such premise, and the applicant is a resident of the state and his neighborhood consent petition is in due form, and the applicant's premise are not within 500 feet of an elementary school. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents which are being introduced in evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of Chapter 8.97 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis and St. Louis City Ordinance 68571. Item 2, the application for a tattoo parlor with 5 chairs submitted to the board secretary with drawing of the proposed premise. Item 3, a copy of the plat and petition of consent. Item 4, a copy of the letter from the Director of Health dated January 17, 2018, to BPS finding no evidence of health code violations at this facility. Item 5, a memo from the Zoning Inspector, Myra Turner, dated January 3, 2018, finding the plat and neighborhood consent petition to be in due form and satisfying the requirements of Chapter 8.97 and finding the business not within 500 feet of an elementary school. Item 6, letter sent to the applicant dated March 29, 2016, providing notice of today's hearing. Item 7, a copy of the public notices of today's hearing. And Item 8, an occupancy permit issued for 5508 Natural Bridge for use as a tattoo parlor with 5 chairs. At this time, the board will swear in and hear from the city's representatives present, followed by the applicant and those in support of the application. The board will then allow those in opposition, if any, to address the board. Your testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, members of this board may have questions for you. Following this hearing, the board will proceed with its regular agenda. Following the conclusion of the regular agenda, the board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearing. The board asks the representative of the zoning department to please come forward and be sworn in.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name for the board, please.
Myra Turner, zoning inspector for the city of St. Louis.
Did you review the completed plat and neighborhood consent petition submitted by the applicant for the proposed tattoo establishment to be located at 5508 Natural Bridge?
Yes, I did.
Did you determine that the neighborhood consent petition complies with the requirements of Chapter 8.97 of the Revised Code?
Yes.
Does the board have any further questions regarding the plat and petition process? Do you have anything further you'd like to add?
It's actually on a very busy street, and there is no school in that area.
Thank you very much. The board asks the representative of the Department of Health to please come forward and be sworn in.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
Maria Cutriano.
Did you perform the inspection of the proposed tattoo parlor located at 5508 Natural Bridge?
Yes, I did.
And did you determine that the proposed tattoo parlor complies with all applicable health and safety laws and the regulations as promulgated by the Director of Health?
Yes, I did.
And is there anything else you'd like to add for the board's knowledge?
Sanitation standards were good inside the facility, and then also with the owner's plans to conduct day-to-day business with customers were all in proper sanitation and in compliance.
Okay. And does the board have any questions for the representative of the Department of Health? Thank you very much. The board asks the applicant to please come forward and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
Adetokunbo Osisanya.
And I will apologize for mispronouncing your name, sir.
You're welcome.
Are you a resident of the state of Missouri?
Yes, sir.
How many tattoo chairs are being applied for?
5.
Okay. And are you aware that any increase in the number of tattoo chairs must be applied for with this board?
Yes.
Okay. How many employees will you have at this establishment?
At this very moment, 2.
And do all the tattoo artists have their Missouri state licensure?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to go through a series of questions that you can answer. But first, will you be able to comply with all the provisions of Chapter 8.97 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis?
Yes.
And each of these as follows. Do you understand that as the operator of the tattoo parlor, you're at all times responsible for the orderly conduct of the tattoo parlor and the acts of any agents, servants, or employees in the operation of the business?
Yes.
Pursuant to Chapter 8.97, tattoo parlors may only be open from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m., 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. What are your proposed hours of operation?
10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tattoo parlors shall be kept clean and well lighted so that the rear of the premise is plainly visible from the front of such premise. Will you be able to maintain the tattoo parlor in this manner?
Yes.
And finally, no tattoo parlor shall allow or permit any loud noises, boisterous or disorderly conduct in or around the premise or on the grounds of such premise, and the tattoo parlor shall prevent the loitering of persons on the premise or around the grounds of the tattoo parlor. Will you be able to comply with these regulations?
Yes.
Any questions from the board for the applicant? Anything else you'd like to add for the board?
I thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. If there's anyone else in favor of this application that wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. Is there anyone in opposition to the application that wishes to testify? Please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. The matter concerning hearing number 8216 is now closed and submitted. The board will now continue with its regular agenda. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Hayes is excused. Director Augustine is excused. Director Moore. Here. Director Edwards is excused. And President Bradley.
Here we have a quorum. I'll call this meeting in order.
From the President. Plans and specifications for letting number 8663, improvements to the O'Fallon Park Boathouse, St. Louis, Missouri, 63107. Addendum number 1 to letting number 8659, replace 5 non-load interrupting 5 kV switches on concourses A, B, and C transformers 2 and 4 at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. From the President, Director of Public Utilities and Streets, joint recommendation that permit for SLLC Real Estate LLC, care of Cortex, for public improvement at 4245 Duncan in City Block 3917, recommends approval subject to certain conditions. Recommendation that permit for Junior College District for public improvements at 5500 Oakland in City Block 4002 be approved subject to certain conditions. And Novation Church to encroach with wheelchair ramp at 2912 Chippewa recommends approval subject to certain conditions. From the President and Director of Public Utilities, Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, joint recommendation that permit for Landscape St. Louis, Inc. for park improvements at Francis Park, Eichelberger, Donovan, Tam, and Nottingham be approved subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Utilities, recommendation that permit for City of Olivet, Department of Parks and Recreation to conduct a prescribed burn of 3 acres of prairie area in Stacy Park between March 1st, 2018 and April 30th, 2018 be approved. Recommendation that the board declares as emergencies the following: for a leak found on 30-inch water main, System Graphics hired a plumber to detect leak and excavate their sprinkler and domestic service. No leaks were found after excavating. And to rebuild and repair hydraulic hammer for backhoe, recommends approval. From the Director of Public Utilities and Streets, joint recommendation that the following permits be approved subject to certain conditions as follows: Union Electric doing business as Ameren, Missouri, to construct new duct banks, approximately 3,500 linear feet of open trench construction at Olive from Tucker to 9th, 10th Street, from Chestnut to Locust, Locust from 11th and 9th, 9th from Locust to Olive and Pine, from 10th and 9th. Charter Communications, starting at the existing charter number 99 in the intersection of 4th Street and Locust. Charter would like to bore south 300 feet to existing manhole 2470 in the intersection of 4th Street and Olive. Bore south 300 feet to existing manhole number 98 in the intersection of 4th Street and Pine Street. At that point, bore east 50 feet and set a vault in the sidewalk on the northwest corner. Then bore east 150 feet to 220 North 4th Street, starting at 1 Federal Reserve Plaza, ending at 220 North 4th Street. Total footage would be 800 feet. All fiber to be placed in a 2-inch duct. Fiber count would be 72 CT. Windstream, beginning and ending in front of 1111 Olive. ADB to open Cut Street, 30 feet to place one 2-inch conduit for fiber optic cable from AT&T to Tier Point manhole for Windstream. This work is being done to serve customer located at 1111 Olive. AT&T to bore and place one 4-inch and two 2-inch poly pipes from AT&T manhole at the front of 4500 Magnolia, north across Magnolia 494 feet to the east side of Alfred, then north on Alfred to manhole at the front of 2600 Alfred, then continue north for 579 feet to manhole at the front of 2150 Alfred. AT&T starting at manhole at the side of 3867 Cottage to place 540 feet of UG copper cable to manhole at 2424 North Vandervender. We'll also repair conduit just south of Cottage on Vandervender. And AT&T starting at manhole at the side of 4260 Forest Park, bore and place 1,000 of fiber optic cable to the front of 4155 Duncan. From the Director of Public Utilities and Public Safety, joint recommendation that the following permits be approved subject to certain conditions as follows. Iowa Holding Group LLC to subdivide land at 3437 and 3439 Iowa in City Block 1569. Pride Properties Group to subdivide land at 2649 through 51 Allen in City Block 1322. And PNS Properties LLC to subdivide land at 1301 Union in City Block 3800. From the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, recommendation that the following permits be approved as subject to certain conditions as follows. Pyrotechnico to use Eternal Flame Park on April 14, 2018 for the theatrical effects show fireworks in conjunction with wedding taking place at the Peabody Opera House. And Spot Media Production Group to fly a drone in Forest Park, Grand Basin area and surrounding area seasonally for clients with first shots in April 2018. From the Director of Public Safety, recommendation that one festival zone be approved subject to certain conditions as follows. And it's Keener Cocktails, April 28th, May 24th, and June 28, 2018 at Keener Plaza. Now we have the conditional uses.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Terrell Island, zoning plan examiner for the City of St. Louis, representing the building commissioner. And I'm here to present conditional use recommendations for board order number 766 transmitted here with our recommendations for the following conditional use applications. Approval with conditions is recommended for 4 applications, and they are 7346 Morganport, 5203 Virginia Avenue, 6120 Del Mar, and 4532 Lindell Boulevard. I request that these recommendations be approved as submitted. Are there any questions or comments about this?
Are there any questions from the board on the conditional uses? Seeing none, I'll take a motion, please.
move to approve the conditional uses.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for approval of conditional uses. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes is excused. Director Augustin is excused. Director Moore.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye. Conditional uses are approved. Hearing number 8211, a revocation of 6163 Delmar as a retail sale of gifts. We heard from the zoning inspector, as well as the health inspector, as well as the conditional use holders representative, that the business is out of business and closed, and the premise has been vacated. So with that in mind, the recommendation would be, after discussing the matter with legal counsel, that we go ahead and revoke the conditional use permit so that it is no longer in use. So that's true, except I think we want to take it away, and because there's nobody else. So the point being is that the clarification is that if we revoke the conditional use permit, that a new owner coming in behind would have to reapply for the process and wouldn't be able to pick up the conditional use that's currently in place. I am not aware that there is another business coming in, so I would still hold the recommendation that we revoke the conditional use until such time that someone else reapplies for it. Open the floor for discussion.
I move to revoke the conditional use permit 123272.
Second.
Moved and seconded for revocation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes is excused. Director Augustin is excused. Director Moore.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye. Revoked. Hearing number 8216 for Underground Inc. STL at 5508 Natural Bridge, operate a tattoo parlor. Again, we heard from the zoning inspector, the Department of Health, as well as the proposed conditional use holder, that all conditions and all items and approvals and inspections are in order. So I will open the floor up for any discussion. See?
I move to grant the permit for conditional use.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes is excused. Director Augustin is excused. Director Moore.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye. Approved. I'd like to turn your attention to our meeting minutes from last Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? And I would like to say that Director Scobie, you were excused last week, and we do not have a quorum here to approve the minutes, so why don't we put these minutes on next Tuesday's agenda for approval?
Okay.
Today's agenda, questions or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, take a motion, please.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes is excused. Director Augustin is excused. Director Moore.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye. Today's agenda is approved. Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.